Remember the days when we used to flip channels on the TV to find something to watch? These days, ain't nobody got time for that. Because of that, on-demand streaming has become the new way to watch TV for the most part. That being said, the experience is heavily dependent on the specific streaming device you use. In today's video, we're gonna look at a streaming device that just might be the best one for majority of the people. Hi everyone, welcome to another Tech Talk with Samir, where I talk about anything and everything related to technology in my life. Thanks to you guys, the channel has recently reached 1,000 subscribers. Although it's still a very small channel, it was a big milestone for myself. Let's not stop there though. If you haven't already, please subscribe to support the channel. If you recall, earlier this year I bought a massive OLED TV for the house. There's very few gadgets out there that keeps me amazed for this long, but this OLED TV is definitely one of those. Every time I watch something on it, I'm still amazed by the picture quality. But to get the best experience, you gotta make sure that your video source is compatible with the latest technology like HDR and Dolby Vision. When I first got the TV, my old Roku device was mostly compatible, but it was missing a few of these features. So I started going down the rabbit hole of researching different streaming devices to see what works best without having to spend a lot of money. Let's face it, I was broke after buying the TV. I did try out using the TV's built-in apps to see if I could just live with that, but the experience just wasn't ideal. I'm a heavy user of the Plex app, and the performance on the TV's native app wasn't too good. It kept freezing and would randomly cut out the stream if the bitrate was too high. Over the last few years, I've been exclusively using Roku devices on all my TVs, and generally I've been very happy with it. But this time, as I was doing my research, I came across the latest Google Chromecast with Google TV. I had been a heavy user of the original first generation Chromecast, and it was a revolutionary device. I think the original Chromecast was probably what started the trend of streaming sticks rather than streaming boxes. It was a great inexpensive way to stream things on your TV directly from your phone or web browser. But the reason why I eventually switched to Roku was the Chromecast's lack of a remote. I'm sure it helped keep the cost down, but you only realize how convenient a remote is when you no longer have one. The two things that caught my attention about this new version of the Chromecast were one, that it comes with a remote, and two, that they've still managed to keep it at a reasonable price. For 50 bucks, it seemed like you're getting a lot. So I went looking for it on Amazon and could not find it at all. I'm guessing that's because Google and Amazon are both competing in this streaming device war, and Amazon wants to sell as many Fire TV sticks as possible. But in any case, I was able to find one at my local Target and picked one up. You can get it in 3 different colors, but the one they had at the store was the white one, so I just got that one. To get it hooked up to the TV, all you need to do is plug in the Chromecast to an HDMI port on your TV. Since the device is very compact, you can easily hide it behind your TV. But I had my HDMI cables pre-run when I mounted the TV, so I just set it up in the TV console itself. You do need to power it using the USB-C cable and the wall plug that comes in the box. And that's where I give this device its first points, because although a seemingly small change, it's crazy how many devices out there still come with micro USB port rather than USB-C. We all know that USB-C is the future of connectivity, and it's only a matter of time that even Apple caves in and puts USB-C on the iPhones. So good on Google for making that subtle change. The USB-C port isn't just for the purpose of powering the device. If you wanted to, you can actually plug in third-party adapters that allow you to connect other peripherals to the device. Like if you wanted to connect to Ethernet instead of using Wi-Fi, you can actually do that using an adapter. As long as the adapter also has a power input to power the system, since there's only one port on the Chromecast itself. I myself didn't try connecting any third-party adapters, but Linus Tech Tips did a video where they tried it out. Although based on that video, it seems like switching to Ethernet really doesn't make much of a difference on this device. Now, this isn't a comprehensive review, so I'm not gonna go through the details of the initial setup. However, the overall process wasn't too difficult, and it involved using the Google Home app on the phone and logging into my Google account. They also had an option of doing everything directly on the TV with the remote, but I find that typing account information with the remote is a bit of a hassle, so I just use the Google Home app. As part of the setup process, it asks you what streaming services you have, and once you select your services, it will download the apps as part of the setup. For me, this part took a long time for some reason. Probably took upwards of 15 minutes. Not sure exactly what else it was doing, but I was surprised at how long it took. Once it's all set up, it brings you to the home screen, and right off the bat, it looks pretty overwhelming. But don't worry, it all makes sense in a bit. I've been used to the Roku interface, which is basically just a simple screen with different apps listed across the screen. But this Chromecast has a combination of movies, TV shows, and apps all over the home screen. which is very different from the original Chromecast, which only had scenic wallpapers as its home screen with nothing else on there. This is where the remote comes into play. Since the original Chromecast didn't have a remote, everything was done on the phone and no navigation was done on the actual Chromecast itself. Despite looking quite cluttered, the home screen on this Chromecast is very easy to navigate with the remote. Taking a closer look at the remote, it's a very simple yet effective design. It takes two AAA batteries and Google was nice enough to include them in the box. One of the main reasons why I don't like using LG's native apps is because of how cluttered the Magic Remote is. I mean, it's cool to be able to point at icons like a laser pointer, but when it comes to practicality, I just want something simple and just works. And this Chromecast remote does just that. Depending on what else you do on your TV, there's a chance that you can completely ditch the TV's native remote for this tiny remote. On the side, you have volume control built in, so you don't even need your TV remote for that. It also has a power button, a mute button, and an input change button built into the remote. I don't know about you, but on my TV's native remote, those are essentially the only buttons I ever use anyways. In addition to the TV control buttons, the remote also has a circular joypad for navigating through the interface. The center of the joypad is actually a select button, so it's very intuitive to use. It also has a back button to traverse through apps and menus, and a home button to bring you back to the home screen from any other screen. Speaking of navigating, the remote has a built-in microphone and a dedicated Google Voice Assistant button. It actually works great for searching for content without having to manually type things with the joypad. It also has two dedicated buttons for Netflix and YouTube, but to be honest, I'm not a big fan of having dedicated buttons for specific apps. There's always a chance that someone doesn't have Netflix service and that button will always say Netflix. To Google's credit, they do allow you to reprogram those buttons to something else, but they'll always be labeled as Netflix and YouTube. Thankfully, there's only two dedicated app buttons on this remote. My Roku remote has 4 buttons and I'm always accidentally hitting a button for a service that I don't even have. Going back to the home screen, all the clutter is actually a curation of content across all the streaming platforms. This is where I think Google does a great job. Once you're logged into all your services, it will suggest content to you across all your streaming platforms. In the past, I found myself going through suggested content on Netflix, then going through Amazon, and then Hulu before finally deciding on what to watch. With this, it's all in one place, and once you choose what to watch, it will take you directly to the app for whichever service the content is on. It even shows you all your partially watched content and allows you to resume directly from the home screen. It's quite neat. Although you can navigate through the interface using the remote to find content, this still is a Chromecast and it still allows you to cast content directly from your phone or web browser like the previous generations of the Chromecast. As much as I love my Roku devices, being able to cast browser tab to watch content was something that I heavily missed once I moved away from my old Chromecast. Speaking of watching content, if you have a high-end TV, this Chromecast supports all the fancy picture and sound standards out there, like HDR, Dolby Vision, Dolby Atmos. If I'm being honest, it's the addition of Dolby Atmos that really intrigued me. I actually got a Dolby Atmos compatible soundbar a few years ago after I saw a demo at Costco. It was amazing how it could project sound off the ceiling to give you a virtual surround sound feel. Little did I know that in order to get the Dolby Atmos sound to work, you need to make sure that every device in your chain is Dolby Atmos compatible. From the content to the streaming device to the TV to the speaker, everything in that chain has to be Atmos compatible for you to have the Atmos experience. After I got my OLED TV, the streaming device was the only missing piece in this, and the new Google Chromecast filled that gap. You can actually tweak the settings in the Chromecast to enable or disable certain standards. You can set it to auto detect everything or manually pick the standards that your TV and audio devices support. So far, everything I've said glorifies this tiny little device, but that doesn't mean that it doesn't have any flaws. As great as the new interface is, it is a bit clunky. When navigating through the home screen, it often stutters and sometimes feels slow to respond. I think despite all the improvements, the hardware within the device is lagging behind the software. The ambition is definitely there, but the hardware itself needs a little beefing up for it to catch up to Google's ambitions with the Chromecast. Another thing on my wish list for future versions of this device is some sort of remote finding capability. On the Roku Ultra, there's a button I can press on the box and the remote will make a beeping sound. It's actually pretty handy for those times when the remote is hiding between seat cushions. With all that said, it's very hard to criticize this device when you factor in the pricing. For $50, you get a lot. Some of the features it has are only available on high-end competing products that cost well over $100, which is why I think that this is the ultimate streaming device for most people out there. There's a lot of decent devices out there from Roku and Amazon, but when you look at the overall package, it's hard to beat this Chromecast at the $50 price point. I'm sure a company like Google is always working on the next product, so I'm really excited to see what Google has up its sleeve for the next generation of the Chromecast. I hope you found this video helpful. Don't forget to subscribe and hit the thumbs up button for the YouTube algorithm. And check out some of my other recent videos if you haven't already. As always, stay safe and I'll see you again on the next one.